Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this little guy right here. This is the Ferrum Forge Knives Exec. Not the executive, I don't think. I think it's just the exec. Oh, yeah. First off, though, in the name of full disclosure, I want to thank Ferrum Forge for giving me a very nice deal on this guy. This guy, I had handled some of the prototypes before because, well, the Ferrum Forge is like 20 minutes that way. And so that makes it a little bit easier, but I knew that I wanted to pick one of these guys up. They offered me a good deal. I appreciate that very much. Nonetheless, we do have to assume. Actually, this isn't the best quality controlled one of these guys ever because I was there when they picked it out, so they didn't go through a million of them or anything like that. But nevertheless, there's that, and I'm doing my best not to let that fact or the fact that I went there and got it or got a discount affect my review. It's all full disclosure stuff. Nonetheless, they know, as always, I'm going to talk about the good, the great, the bad, the ugly. Might be a gem, might be junk. And they still let me walk out of the door with it. This doesn't work as well when they're local guys. But anyways, there you go. Next thing, let's do some size comparison real quick. Here it is against the Spyderco Delica. Here it is against the Ontario Rat number 2 and the Spyderco Paramilitary 2. So what we can see here is that in terms of sharpened blade length, this is actually way beyond, well, not way beyond, but it's considerably beyond the Spyderco PM2 here. And is not a small knife, particularly. It's a small knife on this dimension, but not on this one. Then actually one other size comparison against my other Ferrum Forge knife. This is the Ferrum Forge Archbishop, which is much more classically Ferrum Forge, I think. This is the kind of thing that when you say Ferrum Forge to somebody, they start talking about immediately, whereas this is a little bit more exotic, so to speak. Next thing, this is in their Pro series. This is their brand new series of knives. These are being made overseas by We Knives, but they are Ferrum Forge designs fundamentally. And this is actually the very first of their Pro series models that is not based on a past model. The Archbishop or the, what was it? Not the Ferox, was it? Either way, they did another one of their Pro Series models, but those were based on some of their original knives that were their original production, custom, whatever the heck, mid-tech, things that they did for a long time. This is a brand new design that has never been done by Ferrum Forge before, and so there you go. That's kind of interesting. Let's go on ahead and jump into the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly of this very interesting knife. So to start with, on the good side, I mentioned already that this is a super compact knife, but the thing is, this is a lot of blade in a very small body. It's completely safe. I can't touch any of the, parts here. It's safe in that way, but honestly, it's very small for its size. You are getting a little bit over 3.5 inches of blade in a size that is not considerably larger than the Spyderco Delica. Thickness-wise, it's about the same thickness as your Spyderco Delica. Length-wise, I mean, this is a very, very compact knife. You get a lot of blade for a very small body. And that is actually a really cool thing. It's something I appreciate very, very much. Next thing, it is actually relatively light as well. Even though it is solid chunks of titanium here, because of the milling for the carbon fiber there, and I think just because generally they've made good choices, this guy comes in still at 3.37 ounces for a little over 3.5 inches. Less than an ounce an inch, that's a pretty lightweight knife. So I appreciate that very much, and those things together make this super easy to carry. Next thing, they did... I am not here saying that limited editions are a good idea, but I think they did actually a couple of limited versions of it, where they actually swapped out the inlay. It is functionally identical to every other knife, but they had a couple of them with, they had some of them, I don't know how many, with fat carbon fiber and copper thing. And then they had, I think, some black Damascus inlays. There was no functional difference between those and the regular production ones, but they had a couple with those kinds of upgraded inlay materials there. And I think this is actually, if you're going to do sort of a limited run thing to reward your collectors, that's exactly the way you want to do it. You make a knife that is functionally identical to everything else. There's not differences in steel or anything, but cosmetically it's a little bit different and a little hard to get. That way the collectors can collect, but the rest of us end up getting the same tool as the people who are there, waiting at the website, so to speak, on day one. And so I appreciate the fact that they're doing, if you're going to do a limited run sort of, part of it, doing regular production models with limited cosmetics, I think is a really nice way to balance that. That's a good approach. Next thing, one thing that's unusual about the construction of this guy is the integral backspacer approach. What I mean by that is, as you can see, the front side of it is very clean. There's only really the pivot here and then nothing else. The back side, and the reason they can do that is because the backspacer is built into the knife itself. There is just this screw here, then there is a hidden pin on the inside here that are keeping this together on the bottom side here. There is no separate standoff. There is no separate backspacer. It's not like on this guy where there is a separate piece in the middle there. No, this is a very, very simple knife, and that leads it actually to a feeling of strong solidity that is a little bit unusual, I think, in the pocket knife world, because there really is just one chunk of, well, two chunks of metal here, I suppose. It's, you know, your next best thing to a full integral pocket knife. And so I think that's a cool approach, and it works very well here, and it's very well implemented here. Next thing, this has a lot of good details. One thing that I love seeing is this right here. This is a pivot. But more importantly, it is a keyed pivot. It is not free spinning because there's a triangle there, and triangles don't turn in holes. That's a wonderful thing. That means that this is no longer a free spinning pivot, and that is, I believe, going to be a first for the Ferrum Forge folks. I love that so very, very much. I've been complaining about that for years and years and years, and finally there is change. There is proof that the world can get better. And I didn't even have to go over there and steal all their free spinning pivots to prevent that. So that's a wonderful thing. That's a very good detail. But it's also got some other nice details to it, too. You can see here the lock bar insert is internal, which makes for a very nice clipping experience and makes for a very clean overall external design. You have a steel lock bar insert with a ceramic detent ball, and you have a super low profile flipper tab. This is just barely a pocket pecker. I mean, sure, it might do a little bit. It's very, very small. And as a result, this guy, again, carries beautifully, and it just fixes a couple of the major issues. And frankly, the stock is reasonably thick. This feels like it's like Ferrum Forge. Thank you. This feels like a gift to me in some level, to the community. They're finally fixing some of those issues. So that's an absolutely beautiful thing. Next thing, one thing that is very typical of Ferrum Forge is good ergonomics, and this is not unusual in that way. It is not a conventional Ferrum. I mean, almost all of their knives have a forward finger choil, and I like a forward finger choil, don't get me wrong, but this actually works very well in the hand even without one, and it fits quite well. The clip is wide enough that it doesn't cause much in the way of hot spotting. They've done the chamfers in the requisite places. This works pretty damn well in the hand. That's a wonderful thing, and that's good. And you can also see, by the way, that the titanium itself has been rounded over, which is a little bit of an extra mile thing, but it works out very well and makes for a very nice experience in the hand. Next thing, this guy has a great blade. It is 20 CV steel. Should say that right there. Yeah, CPM 20 CV, which is a great steel. Chemically, absolutely on point. WE Knives tends to do very good heat treat, things like that, so that's good. But it is thinly ground. This guy has a very, very thin edge with relatively thin stock, and it is 20 CV, and somehow it manages to avoid looking, beat up. I mean, generally speaking, Ferrum Forge blades, and frankly, WE Knives blades, tend to be very acid, apocalyptic. No, this knife looks like it was actually fresh from the box rather than having been sitting in the bottom of a crate in the ocean for 50 years or something. I am a big, big, big fan of this blade here. It is just spectacular. It's thin, behind the edge, 20 CV. Like, yes, thank you, Ferrum. Then finally, on the good side, this just looks super classy. I mean, you put this down on the table, and not only does it look relatively fast, but it just looks good. With the carbon fiber on here, I mean, this looks like it belongs in a suit or something like that. And so that's an absolutely beautiful thing, and I'm a big, big fan of it. So at least to me, all of that is the good, is that it looks super classy. It's got a very, very nice blade with good ergos, some very nice details, a non-free spinning pivot, yes. Yes, the world can get better. An integral backspacer approach, which is nice. They did some limited variants, but they were all cosmetic only. And it's light and compact and just very, very nice in that way. And of course, somebody's weed whacking outside my apartment, so enjoy that noise. On the great side, though, the action on this is sublime. I do very often talk about action, but I am a little difficult to impress in the action front these days, but this is a really nice action. It has an absolutely beautiful, aggressive detent, but it's not too hard. It's perfectly dialed in, frankly, for this kind of a small, low-profile flipper tab. That's great, but then on the close, it's just sweet. It's just sweet. This action is just sweet, and it has a nice feeling of solidity and lock. Oh, yeah. This is good. This is a good action. This is a satisfying action. It's one of those things that doesn't make sense to anybody who's not a complete and total knife geek. But, oh, yeah. You put this in somebody's hand, they're like, yeah. And frankly, it's better than even their actions from Archbishop. It's better than any of their others. This is just a sweet freaking action on this. Oh, yes. Yes. So, to me, at least, that's what's great, is it a good action. Bad side. Price I'm reasonably neutral on. It's $275. $275. Is this the strongest value ever? No, not particularly, but at the same time, with this action, with this build quality, with just the good design and whatnot, I'm not bent out of shape about it. And honestly, the other things that I'm thinking about is being, feeling like a little bit higher value tend to be relatively new Chinese companies that got one right. And so I feel like this is the value is fine. Would I like to see the price lower? Absolutely. Would I always like to see the price lower? Absolutely. But I think that they're doing fine here. I could see, 2 years ago, this would have been 375 or something like that. So I'm pretty okay with that. I'm probably just being a pain about that. Speaking of things I'm just being a pain about, this guy does something that it always scares me a little bit, and that is that the screw here goes straight into the titanium on the other side. What that means is that if that strips out, you're going to have a bad time because you can't just replace a backspacer or something like that. You have to replace the whole thing. I've not actually ever had that be a problem, so I'm probably overthinking that, but it is something to keep in mind, and that is the one downside of going to this integral backspacer approach, is that you're always screwing straight into the tie. Next thing, there is a very, very slight inconsistency on the inlay chamfer. I'm nitpicking hard here, by the way. But you can see here that the chamfer on the inlay is actually a little bit bigger on this area than it is over here. It's like it was maybe hand chamfered or something like that, and as a result, you have some inconsistency in what looks like a gap. It isn't actually a gap, I don't think. I think it's just the differences in chamfering, but it is something you want to keep in mind, and it's something that's not necessarily ideal. So, there you go. Oh, the horror of horrors. It is just over the 3.5 inch line, that is. You can see here it's like 3.6 some odd. This is going to be of help to absolutely nobody, but it will actually make it illegal in some areas because some cities and municipalities, and I think one state, have laws where, if you go over 3.5 inches, it's illegal as heck. So there's that. Next thing, the clip on this guy is not a super deep carry. You can see you get about this much of it sticking up there. That might be a little less deep than an executive might want, but at the same time, not the end of the world. And then finally, on the bad side, there is a very, very slight bit of a smile on the bottom of this blade because the sharpening choil doesn't go out quite far enough. If they'd gone another maybe millimeter or so, they would have eliminated that. And also the sharpening choil is almost a little bit too light. It's going to disappear very, very quickly as you sharpen this guy. So I would have liked to see this choil be just a little tiny bit deeper and also about a millimeter further out. I think that would have eliminated all of that. But, like I said, I'm nitpicking pretty hard because, honestly, it's a great freaking knife. So on the bad side, there's a slight smile on the blade. The clip is a little less of a deep carry than an executive might want. It's over the 3.5 inch line. Little inconsistency in the chamfering here. The screws going to the titanium, and 275 is fine. Actually, it's probably better. I'm just nitpicking because I'm a jerk. Anyways, there you go. Final conclusion. This is my favorite Ferrum Forge knife ever. And I mean, I at first I was thinking, no, I like the Archbishop more because this is more classically Ferrum Forge, but this wins for me because it is compact. It is very, very small. It's very light. It's a very simple knife in that there were really the two pieces here, but it's done remarkably well with some very good details, the fixed pivot, good ergos, a stellar blade, and a really good action. I like this action just so very, very much. I like this knife a lot. It's not cheap, and I've got some nitpicks on there, but mostly, honestly, it's just good. It's freaking great. This is a really, really nice knife. The more I carried it, the more it's just like, yes. Yes, 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 this is good. This is real good. And it's a knife that I'm very glad that I bought because this is a knife that will be sticking around in my collection. It's just freaking good. In a lot of ways, this knife actually feels like a maturing of some of the previous designs. This feels a lot like what the Crux or the Gent or the Dow would be when it grew up, when it went to work and put on a freaking suit. Then you get the executive. It's got a lot of the same style, a lot of the same sensibilities. Frankly, a lot of the same things that I love in the Crux, or the Dow maybe even more so. But it's just a little bit more subdued. It's just a little bit more sleek, a little bit more slim, and just really, really well put together. This is just a really, really nice knife, and it's like I said, I'm gushing here, but I really like it. It's quite excellent. And given it's in a very crowded segment, it's not like this is, just so you know, this is not the only titanium frame lock that's been released in 2019. I just want to make sure that we're clear on that front. But at the same time, it's really, really good. And for $275, yeah, you got a lot of options, you got a lot of things out there, but it's good, it's carryable, it's slicey, it's beautifully made, and I think for a lot of people, I can see this executing a very important role inside of your collection. So really well done, Ferrum Forge. I hope that this is an ongoing model and that this continues to see a lot of love, because it's a great, great piece, and you really knocked it out of the park with this. So anyways, there you go. I hope you found this interesting to you, and that you have yourselves just an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.